antes de nada, muchísimas gracias por venir. Muchísimas gracias al Departamento de Comunicación de Hello, que como siempre les avisamos a última hora. Están. Y ya que está trabajando en unos días un poco intempestivos para que nos pudiéramos reunir hoy. Y muchísimas gracias a nuestros invitados de Act-On y en particular a Andy, que han venido de California, de Silicon Valley hasta aquí. Y queríamos presentarlos y presentar cuál es nuestra propuesta de valor este año, porque yo creo que es una ocasión especial en la cual directamente un fabricante que es referencia en el mercado va a afrontar el mercado español complementando su producto con la oferta de servicios nuestra de una manera directa y apostando por el país. De hecho, yo creo que es el primer país por el que más sencillamente van a apostar. Entonces, yo os prometo voy a hacerlo muy breve, intentaré que sean 10 minutos. Aquellos que me conocen saben que me empiezo a divagar y me voy por los cerros de Úbeda, pero intentaré ser conciso. Y a mí lo que me gustaría de esta reunión de hoy es más que despejar dudas, incluso generarlas más. O sea, es decir, que al final de esta sesión pudiéramos tener incluso más cuestiones de hacia dónde va esto, qué deberíamos hacer, cómo subirnos al carro, todo este tipo de cuestiones, ¿no? Aunque voy a intentar empezar respondiendo las más básicas. Y las más básicas por cuestiones obvias, porque como sean muy elaboradas y tal y cual, pues yo miraré a derecha o a izquierda para que alguien las responda. Primero hay que ver, o sea, es decir, qué es esto del marketing de automation. Y lo voy a leer la definición que tú me has puesto para que no me riñas luego.
Bueno, siempre... es una definición un poco teórica, o sea que...
Vamos.
Pero se está cómodo con ella, que es
bien,
bueno.
Pues es, básicamente, es una plataforma de software de marketing integrado capaz de desplegar una variedad de tecnologías orientadas a gestionar y automatizar los procesos y flujos de trabajo de un equipo de marketing. Es decir, ¿en aras de qué? Pues en aras de conseguir un mayor revenue y una mayor eficiencia. Hasta aquí parece bastante obvio. ¿Qué es lo que ocurre? Que si tú miras el mundo que vivimos ahora mismo, con una generación de datos enorme, con un sistema digital en el que podemos captar un montón de datos de usuarios, y te das cuenta que realmente si fuésemos capaces de dar un mensaje adecuado a la persona adecuada en el momento que lo está pidiendo, los resultados serían totalmente distintos de un método puramente estadístico de empezar a empujar a ver qué cae. La diferencia de Hello con respecto a cualquier otro implantador de soluciones de este tipo, una de ellas es que nosotros, aunque tenemos un enfoque consultivo, aquellos que nos conocen ya lo conocéis un poquillo, pues, somos un poco paracaidistas en el tema del marketing, venimos de consultoría, pero nosotros venimos de captar para nuestros clientes el negocio, o sea, de estar fuera picando puertas, de hacer campañas de on-off cruzadas, este tipo de cuestiones. Con lo cual, podemos dar ahora toda la cadena de extremo a extremo. O sea, es decir, la única manera de conseguir volúmenes con unos rendimientos no decrecientes o con una inflación no disparada es intentar captar eficientemente y luego además lo que queda de esa base de datos que no ha convertido en primera instancia poder convertirla, ¿de acuerdo? Es la única manera que se nos ocurre de llegar a estas conclusiones. Otras preguntas que nos deberíamos hacer es el por qué Hello o por qué Act-On. Cuando nosotros estuvimos mirando esta parte complementaria al negocio de Hello, con Enrique, que fue una empresa que ya había iniciado Enrique tenía una empresa que ya había iniciado sus pasos con Act-On y tenía un acuerdo preferencial con Act-On. Vimos en Hello que era totalmente complementario a nuestro negocio y adquirimos la empresa de Enrique y los acuerdos que tenía con Act-On. Y nos juntamos con nuestros compañeros de viaje de Act-On para hacer una oferta específica para el mercado español, en la cual pudiéramos tener un modelo en el que las barreras a la entrada fueran muy pequeñitas. Es decir, nosotros tenemos clientes en los que gastan una fuerte inversión en captación y luego convertimos un porcentaje determinado de esa inversión. Lo lógico es pensar que no todo lo que no se ha convertido va a la basura, sino que eso tiene sentido el darle una vuelta y ver qué podemos sacar. En el peor de los casos, además, siempre tendremos todos los puntos de contacto con el cliente y los conoceremos mejor, aparte de que cualquier porcentaje que saquemos de ahí ya va a incrementar el valor de nuestras campañas muchísimo. Elegimos Act-On porque es una referencia en el mercado, como luego veréis. O sea, todas las grandes consultoras en el cuadrante mágico de Gartner están, el último informe de Forrester los ponen como líderes, pero además porque tenían un approach abierto, en el sentido en el que Hello tiene hacia sus clientes. Necesitamos una empresa que pudiera construir con nosotros y de la arena del marketing automation es la única independiente, no un fabricante, como referencia que queda. Con lo cual empezamos una aventura en la cual cerramos un acuerdo que para mí es, y es lo que queríamos presentar, es muy novedoso para este mercado, puesto que una referencia en el mercado como es Act-On elige un partner atípico como es Hello, que aunque tiene parte consultorial no es una consultora, pero es capaz de dar toda la cadena de valor y lo hace apostando recursos para el mercado español. O sea, es decir, van a tener unos recursos locales que van a estar en la oficina de Hello y desde aquí el equipo de servicios de Hello con el equipo del fabricante va a dar todas las garantías a nuestros clientes, a nuestros colaboradores y partners para, en un modelo de fácil entrada y por supuesto también fácil salida, empezar a aportar valor desde el minuto cero. He hecho todo al revés, porque teníamos un vídeo, ¿no? Muy bonito.
Sí, pero estaba intentando ponernos el vídeo.
Sí, y no ha salido. Bien, pues entonces...
Esperar, funcionaba abajo, a ver si sale ahora. Ah, it work. Trabaja, bien.
Ahí está.
Es que este ordenador le faltaba alguna instalación, entonces no estaba funcionando.
Bien.
Pero no está la presentación, que veis que nos lo hemos trabajado. O sea,
Bueno,
simplemente...
se la han trabajado. Bien, yo creo que al final, ya sabes que conmigo es el caos absoluto y yo todas tus presentaciones me las cargo y tal.
Bueno, aquí tenéis que hablar de quién es Add-On y quién es Hello. Como no lo ha dicho, lo veis, os daremos la información, ¿vale? Es un poco una referencia de dónde viene Add-On, de dónde viene Hello, qué es lo que estamos haciendo. Yo creo que Andy nos podrá luego, cuando haga su presentación, entrar un poquito en profundidad. Pero bueno, esto es un poco nuestras referencias de mercado, en lo que creemos, lo que hacemos, con quién trabajamos. Estas son las referencias de mercado de Add-On. Bueno, tienen 4.800 clientes, entonces no nos cabían todos y hemos cogido unos pocos, ¿no? y aquí es donde empezaba Curro.
Que ya ha terminado.
Que ya ha terminado, pero que os había preparado un pequeño vídeo. A ver si se ve. Y después del vídeo, entra Andy.
Esto tiene mucho que ver con el acuerdo.
Hello a aprender, a desarrollar. Hello a los mejores especialistas. Hello a la experiencia. Hello a adaptarnos, a tomar decisiones. Hello a equivocarnos. Hello a conseguir resultados. Hello a compartirlos. Hello a ser grandes y a ser pequeños, pero matones. Hello a innovar. Hello a ti.
Bueno, y yo creo que sin más dilación paso la palabra a Andy.
Andy, do you want
Para que
to
empiece
start? So you can pass the slides.
Thank you. So as said, my name is Andy MacMillan. I am the CEO of Act-On Software. I want to start by apologizing that I don't speak much Spanish. I did take a little Spanish in high school. Was not my best mark, so I'm going to focus on English, but apologies that I don't speak Spanish. We're excited to be here, and before we go into the presentation, I just want to, number one, thank the team from Hello Media for pulling this together so quickly. We had talked, Francisco came and visited in San Francisco, and Enrique has been working with us for quite a while, and we had talked about putting on an event in Spain as quickly as possible. And the opportunity came up for me to travel this week, and his team worked quite a bit over the holiday to pull this together. And I think we're calling all of you during your holiday to come attend. So thank you everyone for coming and for making this happen. As Enrique mentioned, this is a look at the recent Forrester analysis for marketing automation. We're really proud of how our product is viewed in the market. And what we want to really talk about today is a little bit about the technology, but mostly about why do people use marketing automation, and also how do we make people successful with marketing automation. We believe one of the reasons that we're viewed favorably in the market is because we do have great technology that's easy to use, but we have had a tremendous focus on making customers successful with the technology. When you look at the reviews of Act-On software, one of the things that you will see regularly is comments about our focus our people have on making the customers successful with the technology, helping them show a return on that investment. It was one of the things when I first started working with Francisco and Enrique and the team that really felt like we were very aligned on the reason we do all of this is to help our clients get value from what they're doing. And so I think that's been a big part of why this partnership has been so important to us. I want to talk a little bit about what marketing automation is, and both Francisco and Enrique touched on this. It is about getting the right message to the right person at the right time, but what technology does in this process is by helping pull together the different channels, social, email, web, and pulling together the technology to make those things align, it really allows what Michelle refers to as a freedom for the marketer to focus on their message, on connecting, on communicating, and tying all that back to measurement, which ultimately gets you to looking at your return on investment for your marketing activities. That you can roll out a series of campaigns, programs, messages, and that the technology can help you connect that message to your audience at the right moment. And we'll talk a little bit about why those moments are changing and how marketing automation can help you adapt to those changes. But also, and I think Francisco said this well in the opening, how to connect those activities to measuring the value you're creating, and how to create value even out of those programs that may not convert immediately. The idea that someone might have interacted with a campaign, but in the future will become a customer, and how do you bring them into the next moment in the next campaign? And that's a big part of why the technology is so important. A little bit of statistics on marketing automation. 80% of marketing automation adopters saw their leads, their business growth, increase 77% of the time, which is a tremendous return on investment for a technology product. An alignment between sales and marketing. 3/4 of companies that roll out marketing automation with their CRM see a much greater alignment between sales and marketing. And this is something I'll touch on as well when we talk about the way people buy products now has changed dramatically. And it is really about a partnership between your marketing organization and your sales organization. So, what is marketing automation? And it's nice to talk about technology in broad terms, but what does it actually do? It is really about pulling together campaigns, reporting and analytics around a series of activities that you do with your customers and your prospects. This is everything from landing pages to email campaigns to web forms to social media, and all of it revolves around a couple of key concepts. Being able to segment and group your customers together, but a big portion of it is around scoring. This idea of looking at what value are you creating for a customer or a prospect at each step along the way, and then scoring how do they interact with that content. Are they leaning into your messaging, your value proposition? Are they wandering off somewhere else and you need to get them in a different program? But it's really about creating these segments, driving the content, and then scoring all of that activity. Every time a prospect interacts with your brand, to us, it means something. It might mean something positive, it might be neutral, it might even be negative, but are you measuring that and are you reacting? If you are measuring tracking and reacting to that, we believe you can sell smarter and you can drive a lot more engagement with your target audiences. We see the buying journey changing dramatically. And so we talk about 3 layers of insight that you want to have as part of that buyer's journey along the way. You want to know the demographics of who you're marketing to. You know, the basics of just who are they. And I think this is fairly traditional. This is how we've typically tended to think about our audiences. We naturally sort them into demographics. We're starting now to do more in marketing and advertising in general to talk about psychographics, a persona. Not just, you know, that they're male or female or a certain age or live in a certain area, but what do they like to do? You know, this is where a lot of marketing now is focused. If you, you know, read advertising journals or marketing materials, they talk a lot about lifestyle marketing and interest marketing. But we believe very strongly that the next big activity that's going to happen in the marketing space is going to be around behavior. And what I mean by behavior is it's good that I know who a person is, I know their demographics, and I might know their psychographics, what they're interested in, but what are they actually doing when they interact with my brand? They're sending me incredible signals, and we think every person is going to want to be interacted with differently, and they're going to want to be interacted with in a way that reflects how they're interacting with you. One of the things that Michelle and I have been talking about recently is, you know, we believe segments are going to start to feel more like stereotypes. And we don't really like stereotypes. We feel like if people, stereotypes are a way to group people, but when they're not true to an individual, they're almost offensive. And that's kind of how segments can be on some level. If you get segmented a certain way in a marketing campaign, but you don't feel that that reflects you, that can be very challenging. So how do we actually interact with you based on your behavior, who you are? And that's where we really think marketing gets to this one-to-one and very personal interaction, and that's how we think you're going to build brand value in the future. So what can we do with these as we start to go deeper into those 3 layers of insights? First, we want to be proactive. We know that, you know, inbound marketing has been a very big term, and we're certainly advocates of the ideas of inbound marketing, but we also feel like you want to be proactive, right? You want to go out and actually engage with people that can help grow your business, people that you believe would be interested in your products and services, so it needs to be proactive. We need to be actively then nurturing and cultivating that relationship, right? I want to think about allowing a buyer or a prospect to control that journey, but where appropriate, I want to be proactive and provide them that surprising, delightful experience with my brand. It needs to be targeted. No more do we just blast out one message for everyone, right? I want to be targeted. And we need to have what we call a 360 view of the buyer. I need to know not just what marketing is doing with this person, but what is the rest of my organization doing with this person? You know, there's nothing worse we all experience this as consumers. There's nothing worse than you know, calling a company to complain that you're frustrated, and the next day they send you a mailer about what a wonderful experience you're having with the company. Would you like an upsell, right? It's very frustrating. So we need to have that full view of what's going on, so again, that one-to-one interaction is true and feels every bit as rich as if it was a one-to-one relationship with another person. And so I want to take a moment and talk about what we call the evolving buyer. So we've been talking a little bit about technology and about how we as marketers think about, you know, segmentation and behavior and things like that. But if we kind of spin the camera around and point it at our buyer, we buy things very differently now. We used to have a relationship with buyers where it was very structured. And this is true whether it was, you know, in kind of a B2B sense or a B2C sense. If I wanted to buy a new vehicle, I went to 3 or 4 different places that sold vehicles, and they walked me through their selling process. And what I knew about their vehicles is what they told me, and I could decide what of that I wanted to believe, and then I could make a choice. And you know, the job of marketing was go find people that you can have come to my business. And then it was the job of sales to say, when these people arrive, assume they don't know anything about our business, but we were able to get them to come here and now sell them. And this has completely changed. Your buyers are now in control of the journey, completely. They start the buying process almost 80% of the time with a web search. They don't come ask you, tell me about yourselves. They go find out. 50% turn to social media. So even when they want to speak to someone about your product or service, they've decided, instead of speaking to you first, they're going to speak to someone else they trust who's going to give their view of your business to them. Your goals haven't changed. You still want to drive your brand. You still want to go out and do demand generation. You still want to expand those relationships. But the way that you will have to do that is going to change dramatically. The modern buyer is connected 5 hours a day to information sources that 10 years ago they didn't have. 1 billion people in the world have smartphones. So even if they are in your shop, in your hotel, in your office, on a webinar with you, they are real-time fact-checking everything that you tell them. Right?
Who are doing that?
They're empowered, right? They drive the process. They drive the process on their terms. They're impatient. It should happen right now. And those can be at all hours of the day. I think of even my last vehicle I purchased, just to continue that last analogy. My wife and I have an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and now a 3-month-old, and we're thinking about a larger vehicle. We are having that discussion sometimes at 10 o'clock at night about which vehicle we want. I want to be online and I want to be able to web chat with the brand that I'm talking to about a question I have. I am not going to the dealership at 10 a.m. on a Saturday and letting a salesperson sell me. I own that process. They're impatient and they're empowered. So the way to think about this is your buyer has access to information and they have access to choice. So how are you positioning yourself and your brand in the best way possible to be of service to them along that journey? You want to be an advisor in some way as they go through that journey. You want them to look at your information and say, this is the information that's helping me make a decision. This is the information that is getting me to where I need to be. And you become a trusted advisor as a marketer as someone goes along a journey to purchase a product or a service. And the scariest part is a lot of this journey today is invisible to you. 70% of a buying process today is completed before they speak to you. Think about what this means to your sales team. So we believe this is the opportunity for marketers to impact that relationship in a whole new way. It is going to be our job as marketers to bring the sales team, not people off the street that you got to the doorstep, but people that have gotten to the doorstep saying, I've done a bunch of research about this and I believe that your product, your service, your brand is something I'm interested in, that I believe your positioning of the market, your view on the world, this is now marketing's job. We're involved in selling in a way that we've never have been before. And so, now that I've explained how terrifying this is, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, who's going to tell you how we deal with this. Michelle joined us recently as our CMO. She's been with the company about 4 months. I've worked with Michelle now for 12 years, 13 years. I think Michelle's one of the best marketers in the world, and she's going to give you a little bit of a view of, how do we think of this changing buying journey actually as an opportunity, and something I think is really exciting for marketers. So is this going to reach if I continue to pull this towards Michelle?
Do you want to switch?
Here, I'll just switch these. I'll switch these with Michelle just so she can.
Buenos días, gracias. Es un placer estar aquí. Puedo hablar un poco español, pero voy a presentar en inglés porque es mejor para todos.
Bueno, pues
So I'm going to speak a little bit about the expanding role of marketing. And so as Andy was talking about, really at the end of the day, how I see marketing, and a lot of times marketing views, their total job, we see that changing because there used to be a point of time where marketing really thought of themselves as just the brand, right? So it was about advertisement. It was around kind of the the impression that you can make in the market. You know, and then on a B2B context, a lot of times marketing was really thought of the team that just generated leads, right? And that was it. And we really see that shifting a lot, where marketing is really having a different role within an organization, just due to a lot of these changes in the buyer, but also how people are thinking about the customer relationship, right? A lot of times customers, you know, marketing sales would think about it all into the point of sale and be done, right? And that was the services department who actually had to deal with that. And we really see that shifting with marketing, where really it's the total customer relationship in that whole lifetime. And our role is to really be thinking about the brand experience across all the touch points, right? From that initial time they hear of your brand, through that buying process, as they become onboarded as a customer, as they try to rethink, do they want to renew doing business with you? Do they want to renew the service? Do they want to purchase again? Do they want to keep buying more? And so we think that the role of marketing, right, is around this brand demand generation as well as expanding the customer relationship. And so, you know, I think a lot of times we talk about, you know, we need to be rethinking marketing, right? So number one, it's more than just demand generation, right? It's more than leads. Because leads are just names, right? It's really about revenue. It's about the pipeline, what you're bringing to the business. It's also that marketers become the steward of the whole customer experience that I just talked about. So that we've seen a lot more often marketing and sales has had an interesting, you know, depending on the organization, either challenging or very close partnership. And then we also see from a customer service side, a lot of organizations building a chief customer success officer. You know, someone who is concerned about not just servicing the customer, but the success of the customer. And we see the partnership of marketing being much stronger with that role as well. And then the third point I mentioned, right, it doesn't stop at the point of sale. We need to be thinking about our customers. We do see a trend in the market where people are starting to, you know, it's not just software as a service, but there's a lot of different industries that are thinking about that kind of subscription-based business, right? And so that's changing a lot of industries on how they're thinking of that customer relationship and loyalty and advocacy. So we do see the role of the CMO changing, right? Becoming a much more strategic department and a much greater influence across the executive board, so they can own that brand. And we really think that because of a lot of these changes, it's really how we're shaping the Act-On marketing automation solution, is to make sure that there is a technology that's not just sending emails, right? Not just on focusing leads, but how do I take a step back and have a single platform, a technology set and set of services that can really manage everything from this brand demand and through expand. And build this awareness across that journey, right, that stops and starts and is unique and different for every person in a more scalable way. And really advocate, right, allow customers to be able to advocate by the word of mouth. So just some statistics. We've been doing a lot of surveys with marketers, and just to show you some of the results that we've been seeing is that when we were thinking about the brand demand expand, a lot of people we've talked to kind of really started to see that as well. And we did some surveys, and just even how they're trying to measure and share their impact in the organization has been across those roles as well. So just these three statistics showing that marketing leaders, 57% of them were using revenue generated and using ROI for brand marketing. Right? So this emphasis of how does brand kind of impact revenue. A lot of marketers are starting to look at it that way, as well as demand generation, right? So, you know, like my head of sales and I, when we talk a lot, it's not his pipeline, it's our pipeline, right? And so it can't be, I can't stop at the number of names that I generate, the number of leads, right? It really needs to be the opportunities and about the customers that we create together. And then 57% of marketing leaders use revenue generated for customer marketing as well. And that's definitely been, just even in the United States, an interesting kind of department, because a lot of times it's been ignored by marketing, or there's roles that pop up that either it's just someone who's kind of working from a positioning standpoint with the services team, or maybe there's someone who's managing customer references. But we've definitely started to see a greater role. My team, I actually just reorganized a lot of things. I started 4 months ago. I now have a head of brand, my customer marketing. I have a head of demand generation. I also now have a head of customer marketing. And all of that is supported by a shared services and operations team. And then I have a product marketing organization. And my customer marketing team, right, they are aligned to the customer success. And their job is to be thinking about, how do we make sure that our customers realize the value, right? And that value could be making sure they're using the technology the best, really understanding trends and things that are going on in the market, and really thinking about, right? It's not just that initial being a customer, but as we continue to do business with them. With our customer base, like that is a main goal of the customer marketing team.
I just want to add emphasis to this point because I think it's really interesting what Michelle's done with her team. Her customer marketing team is measured on customer success metrics, that the customers are getting ROI, that they're rolling out features, not on are the customers being, are they acting as references? Because if they are successful, then we know that they will be good references, but to the point of it being invisible, we're not brokering that very often or as often anymore, right? We're finding our customers are getting asked by other people about their success without us being in the middle. They're not asking us for a case study, they're just calling someone else. And so to actually have someone in marketing whose bonus is tied to customers being successful with the product rather than simply participating in sales cycles, I think is a really interesting approach Michelle's taken, and we're actually seeing more marketers kind of looking at this as an interesting way for the role of marketing to be even more strategic for the company.
And then with, just from the survey that we did, the most important KPIs that marketing departments were tracking were definitely revenue generated, return on investment, website traffic, and leads generated. And I think a big part of that is those changes in buyer journey, right? All the digital channels that we're needing to manage. All that's been impacting or has an impact by marketing, right? So we need to be better at tracking the size of the audience we're bringing in, the leads we generate, but also as Andy mentioned, right? Marketing automation. If you can, because so much of the marketing with digital, so much of the marketing's role has changed and become there. If you let it be, it can become very manual. Right, if you think about every time you're wanting to have a more one-to-one communication, it's many more messages, many more emails, much more customization, and with that you're taking all your names and you're trying to sort them into lists, and then you're having to create a rich experience. So now there's marketers who have to learn HTML code, and then you're tracking, right, who engaged with what, and it can get very manual, very tedious, and then you turn around and suddenly you look, and all you're doing is you're not focused on marketing anymore, right? You're focused on all these manual tasks, and so part of that is that adds tension with I think the sales team sometimes, where you're wanting to show there is a return on investment, and out of all the channels that you're responsible for, with all the ways you're segmenting, what's the most effective approach? And that's hard if you don't have a system to track and think about this buying journey and how it's changed, so that you can take a step back and see collectively, where you want to invest your money, how you want to change, which activities are worth doing again and again. So marketing leaders are more and more, right, increasingly interested in demand generation from brand as well as customer marketing. It's kind of what we've been seeing. And so to kind of break this down, right? We think about the full customer journey. Is from a brand perspective, right? It's about building that brand across all the different channels, as well as getting mind share. Demand generation, and I'll actually talk through some of the, how the technology can help in those different ways. But it's demand generation of inbound, right? Allowing the prospects and the customers to come to you, but also being more proactive and doing those outreach, and then also thinking about it from the expand perspective. So there's kind of 3 slides where I'll just talk through okay, how does the technology help? We've talked a little bit about this, but some customers say, how do you do it? How are you thinking of using technology in these different approaches? So just to explain a few examples from a brand marketing standpoint. So my corporate marketing team, one area of their business is around the press, the media, industry analysts, and then for public companies, usually there's financial analysts. And these are all influencers, and they're ones that we constantly have conversations with, and we share them information. So one thing that we've changed is that we send all of these influencers our articles, our bylines, our information through Act-On. And so we'll send them the email, and the nice thing is all the different technologies, taking your influencers, segmenting them, being able to score them, and then also see how engaged are they. Out of all the emails you sent them, which ones did they actually open? How often? Did they ever go back to certain messages? You can kind of see, and so the nice thing is when we go on, the gal on my team that manages brands, she'll have us on, say, okay, you're going to speak to these particular media analysts today. This is their articles they tend to write about. But these are also on all the messages I sent them. This is where they tend to respond to. And so then we can have a just more unique, more customized conversation with those people. And then over time, you can kind of see the influence that they've had with your brand throughout the whole cycle. You can also do it from just having the connection, not through email, but also through social channels. We have some technology where we leverage not just our traditional media, but our entire employee base as a way to advocate our brand. And so all of our stories that we put out online, for example, the Act-On Twitter account, the Act-On LinkedIn group, the Facebook group, we'll put in a little message, and then the employees can actually go to a center and then they can share. And it's the same message. They can tweak and put something unique to their own, but they can be sending them out. And the nice thing is, they can do that on their own, but what this does is gives us a way to look back and see, out of all of our employees, who has the greatest influence, right? Because you could see whatever they've sent, right? What kind of reach have they had across everyone? And later on, you can start seeing, because oftentimes you're trying to prove that the time you're spending on these certain social channels, what kind of influence does it actually have in that buyer's journey? And sometimes it takes a while, right? Sometimes it's just, starting to have them become comfortable with your brand, and then maybe later on they purchase something. That since it's all kind of tracked within the system, you can later on see, that was interesting because that had an influence in the buying decision. We also, if we think about how we communicate, it's not just through specific campaigns that are digital, but it's online as well. So events that we have, we will track and manage the event itself and all the communications around it, and that's a part when we kind of take a look back and say what influenced a purchase decision. We can see the digital as well as the events, and then create different tracks. So based if someone came to a particular event, you might automatically get put into a certain nurture track, and then you get follow-on white papers, follow-on demos, and things like that to kind of keep the conversation going. So that was kind of a brand perspective, and then demand generation is definitely where we see a lot of what we do at Act-On, but a lot of our customers as well, because this is where you see a lot of activities, right? You're wanting to create a lot of campaigns. You're wanting to have them, as business has been changing, just even in companies, even in particular businesses, you want to be able to be thinking of the entire account, the company, and not just the individuals. And so being able to go in there and look at every person within an organization. They all have different roles and they have different things that they're interested in, so you want to create a unique message for all of them. And so this gives a way for us to communicate to these businesses at an individual level, but then be able to track back and see how engaged is the organization with you? And we find that very compelling. And then be able to go through and track and measure and have what we call top of the funnel type of communications, as well as middle and as well as bottom of the funnel. And kind of that last one is around customer marketing. You know, again, a lot of times, you know, the deal will be closed and most people wipe their hands, they're done, you know, off to the next one. And so, you know, what we think is changed is that, you know, even at Act-On, what we're doing is working with our customer success team. And we really focus on onboarding. So we think in particular those first 90 days are really critical for people realizing the value. And so I'm having my new customer marketing team start. My new head of it started just 2 weeks ago. But the customer success team has been working on all these onboarding steps. But we're going to be sending out a lot of communications and automating that whole process so that right when you're on board, you get notifications, you get guided on to all the different Act-On University training and resources you should be seeing, directions to your onboarding manager to talk through. And then eventually, what we're going to be doing is taking a look at, there's certain features that we're looking in the product and doing investigations and realizing if people are educated, if they feel comfortable with certain features, they find the product more successful. Right? So for us, it's trying to figure out what those are. And then, instead of just everything being reactive, we want to be proactive, and we should be sending out, right? If people haven't used those, we need to send reminders and say, hey, have you learned about this particular thing before? And that puts them into a different kind of track and educating them along the way. And at the same standpoint, you know, at the end of the day, you do also want to see, you know, who's using the technology the most, who's realizing the most value, so that you can, from a marketing standpoint, right, we want to reach out and see who is willing to be a customer advocate and who's engaging with us. And at the end of the day, what you want to be doing is making sure that if you're scoring, you're segmenting and looking at your customers in a particular way, you can see, right, your advocates and who's kind of most happy with your brand, and particularly who might need a little bit more attention and focus as well.
Okay.
So that's it.
Thank you very much. Lo tengo controlado. Así que si no me salgo del guión, creo que podré dar toda la charla en español. Bueno, hemos hablado de por qué esta relación. Michelle y Andy nos han contado cuál es la situación actual de marketing automation. Yo, mientras estaban hablando, para mí uno de los puntos clave es, no estamos hablando ni siquiera, ¿cómo es? No estamos hablando del final del principio, ni siquiera estamos hablando del principio del final. O sea, la situación es, vivimos en un mundo de absoluto cambio. I would like to ask you, how many changes do you apply to the platform? How many releases do you provide every year?
We release every 2 weeks.
Could you hear again? Could you repeat?
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks. What does mean is, no estamos hablando de que vamos a dar una solución y ya. Estamos hablando de que necesitamos adaptarnos a todos esos cambios. Necesitamos adaptarnos muy deprisa. Hay riesgos porque nuestras organizaciones en algunos casos están un poco arterioscleróticas, no sé las vuestras, la nuestra no damos abasto de tanto que corremos, pero estamos hablando de adaptación al cambio. Esto que estamos viendo, todo lo que estamos hablando, está antiguo ya. Que he dicho está, quería decir está antiguo dentro de 2 semanas, ¿vale? Porque dentro de 2 semanas hay una nueva versión. ¿Y eso qué significa? Significa que tenemos que trabajar juntos, porque vuestro negocio también está antiguo cada 2 semanas, ¿vale? Y vosotros no podéis estar pendiente de esto y de eso. Entonces, nuestro afán es convertirnos en la parte que os permite atender a vuestro negocio en cómo ese negocio va cambiando. No queremos nada más y nada menos, ¿vale? Y esa es la propuesta de valor local. Podríamos acabar aquí, porque todo lo que tengo que decir es eso, ¿vale? Pero bueno, me voy a enrollar porque no lo puedo evitar.
Vaya hombre.
No lo puedo evitar. ¿Dónde estamos hoy? preparándolo con David ayer, había puesto situación actual. Y me decía David, joder, parece que es que acabamos de empezar. No, llevamos una eternidad, llevamos 6 meses trabajando. 6 meses trabajando. Y hemos liado a 10 de vosotros, algunos no están, para que colaboren con nosotros y para colaborar con ellos en este cambio, porque hay un cambio de mentalidad. Lo que han estado diciendo Michelle y Andy es una cosa básica. Ya no hay departamento de marketing, no hay departamento de ventas. No hay dos mundos, hay uno solo, revenue generation. Y si no trabajamos juntos, es absurdo. Imaginaos, el departamento de marketing piensa unas ideas y luego los comerciales no las usan. Cuentan una cosa completamente distinta. Eso es una puñetera realidad. He dicho puñetera, quería decir una realidad. Es una realidad. Y esa realidad tenemos que acabar con ella. El departamento de comunicación está comunicando como piensa la compañía. Eso tiene que estar alineado con lo que dice marketing. Todo eso se soporta en contenidos. ¿Dais abasto a hacer contenidos? ¿Dais abasto a hacer contenidos segmentados? ¿Vale? Entonces nosotros lo primero que hemos hecho ha sido ponernos a trabajar con un foco claro con nuestros compañeros de viaje de Add-On, que es garantizar que todas nuestras cuentas iniciales triunfen. Nuestro objetivo no es que venderos a través del marketing automation, sino a través de las referencias que sois vosotros mismos. Si lo hacemos mal, castigarnos. ¿Vale? Nuestro objetivo es que salgáis adelante, siempre, ¿vale? Para eso minimizaremos todos los riesgos. Queremos que lo hagáis sin riesgos. En cualquier caso, lo primero que hemos hecho es garantizar que os podemos acompañar. Nuestro equipo técnico está certificado, completamente certificado por estos señores. No por nosotros, los hemos certificado a todos. Los hemos examinado y tienen su título. Nuestro equipo de estrategia está en contacto con el equipo de estrategia de Add-On. ¿Por qué? Porque al final esto va de personas, de tecnologías y de procesos. No va solo de tecnología, no va solo de personas, va de procesos. Y la parte clave es que seamos capaces de adaptar los procesos estándares que conocemos a vuestros procesos particulares, que son diferentes en cada compañía. ¿Vale? Todos nuestros account managers, la gente que colabora con vosotros, llevan al menos una cuenta de marketing automation, que conocen, han vendido, están en proceso de cerrar. Y estamos certificándolo desde el punto de vista comercial, para que lo que digan esté garantizado que es lo que tienen que decir y que soporta la realidad de lo que estamos haciendo. ¿Vale? Vamos a tener recursos locales de Add-On aquí, como decía antes Curro, para garantizar la integración de todo este proceso cambiante cada día. Estaba diciendo Michelle, es que estamos cambiando cada día, tenemos que contaros qué cosas estamos haciendo nuevas y sobre todo por qué. Porque cuando cambiamos algo es porque el mercado, que sois vosotros, lo está pidiendo porque lo necesita y porque hay un aporte de valor. No hay que deciros, es que la nueva versión es más molona. No, la nueva versión nos ayuda en este tema y en este tema. Y nos ayuda de esta y esta forma. Y bueno, nosotros tenemos nuestro propio compromiso interno de lanzamiento. Este evento lo hemos montado con Add-On. Estamos centrados en vosotros, pero tenemos un compromiso público de que tengamos Add-On funcionando internamente en este quarter. ¿Vale? Y yo me estoy jugando una cena con alguien de por allí, en un restaurante bien caro. Así que públicamente digo que lo vamos a tener funcionando. ¿Vale?